Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Infinite Potential of Being Human podcast. My name is Nicky and I am your host. I am going to be diving into a tender topic today, and I don't think it's going to be a long episode, but it is an important one and it's a deep one. And I think it's something that people really find hard. I'm certainly hearing it a lot right now. And today I want to speak about compassion. Yesterday I was in the playground with a friend of mine, Ashley, who is a mother of a boy in my son's class. And she was telling me she'd been listening to the podcast, and I asked her, what would you really want to hear from me? What is it that you need? And she said, Nicky, compassion. I need you to speak about compassion. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting. That's the fourth time someone in my world has brought up the challenge that they have with compassion. And I think when you look at the world today, compassion is not only an integral piece that will allow us to actually move forward from the struggles and the conflict and the suffering and the stuckness that is continually looping on the planet right now. But it's like the gateway to ourselves being able to move on from our past and create a new future. And today's episode, I'm going to dive in and speak about why. I want you to know that if you find yourself constantly feeling resentful and angry and wanting and blaming with other people in your life, or maybe with yourself, or maybe both, and it literally creates like a hardened armor around your heart, then this episode is for you. If you find yourself looking at what's happening in the world today and just feeling so enraged, which is completely understandable, but it is hardening your heart, then this episode is for you. If you find yourself seeing things about yourself that you find so intolerable, so repulsive, disgusting, these are words that people in my community have shared with me recently about themselves, and you cannot offer your own self compassion, then this episode is for you. And what I want to cover is what actually is happening with the lack of compassion that is keeping us stuck. The second point is I'm going to talk about what actually is compassion, because I think a lot of people kind of think that compassion is this kind of spiritual, enlightened way of being that is unattainable and also unrealistic to someone just like everyday like you, and it somehow means that we're going to abandon and betray ourselves, or somehow dismiss ourselves, or dismiss our anger, or dismiss what's important. So I want to get really clear on what actually compassion is. And then I want to talk about why it is literally the gateway to moving forwards. And without it, we continue to stay stuck in ourselves, in the looping, repetitive patterns in our life, and as a collective, as a species on the planet. So the first point is what is actually happening when there is no compassion. So on an ontological context, from an ontological context, there are two things that I've learned when working with a lot of human beings. And I have worked with a lot of human beings, thousands and thousands and thousands, in very, very deep, intimate processes. I'm lucky enough that when I work with people, they tell me the truth about themselves, usually the kind of truths that they struggle to even tell themselves about. And so it is a privilege and an honor that I get to sit with people as they tell me and themselves that depth of truth. I have worked with mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers and sisters and brothers and 21-year-olds and 80-year-olds. I've worked with people from all over the planet, different cultures, different color of skin, different genders. I've worked with people who are non-binary. I have worked with people who don't speak English very well. I've worked with people from all different cultures and different walks of life. I've worked with someone who is homeless and that's just come straight off the street, literally into the chair opposite me. I have worked with people who are billionaires. So I can confidently say that I've worked with all different kinds of human beings over a 20-year span. And there are two things that I have learned. I've learned a lot of things, but there are two fundamental things that I've learned in that time in working with this many human beings, and most of them in very, very deep processes. The first thing that I've learned, which is important, so pay attention, is that we are very different. We have different color skin and different experiences that shaped our childhood, and different stories and different struggles in how we experience our reality. We have different cultures that we adhere to and religions, different languages, different sexes. There are many, many, many things that can distinguish us as different. And it is important to acknowledge those differences, fundamentally important to acknowledge those differences. And it would be easy, and in fact, it's happening on a daily basis all the time, that it is because those differences that we have, that is what's causing the problems on our planet. Or let's make it more macro, that it would be because of those differences that is causing the problems in your relationships. Or it is because of those differences that it is causing the problems between you and your friendships, or you and your boss. And most people on the planet will say will automatically and mechanically think that the reason why you and I cannot communicate is because of those differences. The second thing that I have learned in working with lots and lots of different kinds of people is that when you go deeper and you go beneath those differences, in fact, when you get to the very root of what is running someone's suffering, we're not only similar, we are the same. We as a species are designed and run by the same identical survival mechanism, no matter how many differences we have. It is not just similar, it is identical. And it is at this root level that body-mind maturation has to go in order to reveal why we are having the difficulties that we have in our life, causing the struggles, causing the challenges, causing the suffering. And when you are able to distinguish those challenges being generated and created by this identical survival mechanism amongst the whole species, we can start to see that it is not because of those differences that causes all our problems, but because of the identical mechanical survival mechanism that runs all of us. And it is predominantly a blind spot. We don't live in the world aware that we are being run by a survival mechanism. And that survival mechanism is coloring how we experience our reality and causing us to bring our past everywhere we step into the future. You have to go back and listen to the last episode where I speak about how your childhood is shaping your world. And so why am I sharing this with you? Because when I've worked with thousands and thousands of people, and I have seen these two things, it is because of the second piece that allows every person that's worked in this work to start having any capacity or availability for compassion. Because when you see that what causes your suffering and what causes someone else's suffering and causes your behavior and causes someone else's behavior and causes your pain and causes someone else's pain, and you see that it is the same identical mechanism that runs yours and everyone else's, you start to see that you're not separate from the human race. You're part of the human race. That you are being run by something that everyone on the planet is being run by. And it's not because you did anything wrong. You certainly need to be responsible for it, but it's not because it's personal, even though it feels very personal. And when you're able to really see that on a deep, deep fundamental level, compassion is infinite. So for yourself and for everyone else. So the first piece I want to show you is what actually is happening that doesn't allow for compassion. You see, when you get stuck in your stories or your patterns or your behaviors that you keep wanting to change it, you keep wanting it to be different, but you keep sabotaging, or you keep doing the same behavior, or keep choosing partners that are the same way, or you keep acting out in the same way, or you keep finding yourself with the same problems, like the money keeps running out, or you never seem to use your voice, or you really can't build your business, or your dad always takes it out on you, and then, or you always get in a fight with your mom, or you always get in a fight with your boss, whatever. When you think that what's running you is individual and separate and personal to just you, then you take it very personally. In fact, you really beat yourself up. Why am I like this? Why am I broken? Why am I so weak? Why do I keep, no matter what I do I keep getting run by the same things? There must be something wrong with me. Now, that I have heard 100% of the people that I work with, before they can even see that what's running them is a human survival mechanism, which is where we take you in Body Mind Maturation in our Listening to Life program. You can only see that there's something wrong with you. No matter what you do, you keep repeating the same stuff. And when you take it so personally and you make it so personal, it's impossible to have full compassion because you think that it's just you. And when you blame yourself for that, what happens to the system? As soon as we are blaming or judging or shaming or guilting, that feeds the survival mechanism even more. In fact, the mind recognizes that as more of a threat. And then literally clamps you even deeper into the protection and the masks and the survival patterns and the armoring up and all the ways that you have been behaving that have been trying to protect you from the pain of your past. So the more you blame and the more you judge and the more you shame and the more you guilt, the deeper you get stuck. Nothing can heal in that circumstance. Nothing can heal in that environment. Just take, for instance, imagine a baby that is trying to learn how to walk. And every single time it falls down, you shout at it. Why are you taking so long? Why did you make a mistake? Why did you do it again? Quite literally, just based on the way that the mind works, which is designed to survive, the mind will shut down the nervous system, which will then be activated and experiencing like it's under threat and in danger, put everything into fight or flight mode, and being effective and creative and blooming and flourishing and thriving is not possible in that environment. Now, are you doing that to yourself? All day, every day? Maybe you're pretending you're not, but you are. Can you see how nothing can heal? If you are to outgrow the survival protection mechanisms that your mind has shaped because of pain in your past, if you're to outgrow that, the only way to outgrow it is if your system doesn't think you need it anymore. And it will only allow you to feel like you don't need it anymore if you create an environment that feels safe enough that it doesn't have to keep clinging on to the survival mechanism. In order to get the child to let go of clinging onto the side of the pool and trust that it can float, you have to create an environment for the child to be safe enough to let go and lean back. Blame, shame, or guilt can and will never create that environment. In fact, the more we blame, the more we shame, and the more we guilt, the more into survival the human mechanism goes. That is for you as an individual and for everyone else. If you're blaming the people in your life, there's no way that they will heal in your care. If the people in your life are blaming you, there's no way that you can heal in their care. If you are blaming the planet, if you are blaming society, if you are blaming everything else out there, there's no way we can heal as a collective. So blaming, shaming, and guilting is like crack and heroin for survival, which is why we keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into fear and control and panic and fighting and conflict, why that is all getting worse on the planet today. So you can hear that the more we blame, shame, and guilt, and the less compassion we allow ourselves to experience, or at least our commitment to compassion, the more stuck we stay. So it's actually very ineffective. And it's not going to get us closer to the results that we want, which I suspect is flourishing and freedom and thriving and joy and healing and fulfillment and wholeness. So what actually is compassion? Well, it's not, oh, let me be love and light and peace in the world and dismissing and spiritually bypassing everything that's painful and difficult and challenging. That's not what compassion is. Compassion is being able to see really clearly what actually is running and driving your suffering, or what is running and driving another human being's suffering, and being able to offer that and yourself real, deep understanding of that. Like, I remember when I was doing some deep work on my teens, and, I was a pretty pretty challenging teenager. By the time I was 15, I was expelled and I was acting out, and I was, just really acting out a lot, and hurting myself in the process. And for many, many decades, I carried a lot of shame about how I was and who I was in those years of my life. I wasn't a very nice person. It wasn't someone that I felt proud of. And I would reject that version of myself so much. But as I blamed it and shamed it and felt guilt about it, simultaneously it would create this hardened, cold kind of armor over my heart. And then one day I realized that as long as I continue that pattern of blaming, shaming, and guilting those aspects of my own humanness, my heart will continue to be blocked. And my heart is the avenue to all that is creative and alive, and the depth of the connection, and the depth of fulfillment, and the depth of intimacy, and the depth of flourishing that I can have available in my life in abundance. So the only one who's really paying for that still and keeping myself imprisoned is myself. So what then allows me to have a much, much deeper understanding of that teen that might allow me to have compassion? Well, I had to go into a deep inquiry to understand more deeply. Why did I behave that way? It's not just because I was a shithead. No, I wasn't. I was just a human being. I was a teenager. Why did I behave that way? What can I learn more about that will help me have a deeper understanding of myself? And the more I looked and the more I learned, the more I saw that the behavior that I acted out in at 15 was the only behavior that could ever have been available to someone that was carrying those root stories shaped by her childhood. When I saw it that way, I saw it, wow, I don't think I could have done it any other way. I had a very, very deep understanding of not just the personal aspects of my behavior, but how the survival mechanism runs at all, which is all what I talk about in the episode before this. The moment I was able to have that depth of understanding, I was able to forgive her. How could I blame her when she's run by survival? And I was able to offer real compassion. Compassion is when you can understand deeply and empathize and offer an understanding that comes from love for that human being. Now, but that's not the end of it. Compassion, that depth of understanding and love, also then allows us to be responsible, to learn from it and do it differently. You see, this is the piece that most people don't realize with compassion. It's not just about offering love and light and peace to someone and understanding, but actually using that understanding to learn from it and create change. And that's why compassion is so powerful. When I learned that what was running me was a survival mechanism, and I was able to offer her compassion, that's not the end of the process. Now I have to learn from it. Wow, if that's what was running me, what can I learn from that to make sure that not only that doesn't continue to run me in any way, but I can learn from it so that I can have more effective behaviors and a more effective, accurate relationship with myself so that I can create a more nourishing, flourishing life and then be responsible for that. Now let's take this when it's someone else, someone who's acting like an asshole and they're like, I don't know, drunk and they're throwing shit in the street, and it doesn't mean that you don't feel angry. It doesn't mean that you don't feel unsafe. That's real and true. It's not excusing someone else's behavior. But when I feel hate and blame and resentment at that person, my heart is what gets hard. So when you really understand what runs human beings, like let's take your mother. When you really understand that what runs your mother is the same thing that runs you, deep, deep understanding, maybe we can offer that human being compassion. It doesn't excuse their behavior. It doesn't mean, oh, I guess her behavior doesn't matter then. No, it hurt me, but I don't have to harden my heart and be angry and blaming and resentful at you. I can understand why you were the way you were. I get it. In fact, the more I get my mother, with compassion, the more I get myself. And I can offer myself more compassion. And then what can I learn from it? Well, if that's what ran her and drove her to behave that way, that affected me that way, I can feel deep compassion for it, but I don't want to repeat that behavior. So what do I need to do to be responsible so that I don't repeat that behavior on myself and I don't repeat that behavior to my child or to anyone else? Compassion is like putting fertilizer in the soil and allowing the flower to bloom. You have deep understanding of what's been running you, of why you are the way you are, and you offer yourself love for that, and you're willing to be responsible for it, to learn from it. Now, the only problem with compassion is that you can't be blaming, judging, fighting, and resentful whilst also being committed to compassion. You have to choose, which is probably why people find it the most difficult. You kind of have to get off the battlefield and start being committed to living from a different place, which is a far more responsible paradigm and context to come from, and effective. One keeps us stuck. One allows the flower to start blossoming and growing and blooming. You see, when we are coming from a place of commitment, of compassion, and then we take action to be responsible for what we're learning from the things that we're learning from, that we can be compassionate for, we're literally allowing the survival mechanism to loosen, and we build a more safe, flourishing way of being. We start finding ourselves brave enough to take actions that we couldn't take before. Maybe you'll start writing the book because you're so compassionate to yourself that you're allowed to make mistakes, that you're allowed to start one chapter and then freak out, that you're allowed to write something that isn't absolutely perfect. It allows you to grow and bloom and flourish that cannot be possible when blame, shame, and guilt is the paradigm you're coming from. So I hope that this has been helpful. Compassion, I believe, is the medicine that our world needs. Not just because it's all love and light. No, that's not what I mean. Because it is a higher resonating frequency from which we can be coming from and creating from as human beings, and a far more responsible one. And I think that's what our planet needs more of now than ever before. So why don't you begin with yourself? Let it begin with you, and then you can take that out into your world. Thank you all so much for listening. If you have loved these episodes, then please subscribe to our channel and be able to access all the episodes that keep coming out. The next one that will be coming out will be an interview, and I'm excited for you to listen to it. Just click the button below and you can be able to access that next episode. This is the Infinite Potential of Being Human podcast. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Nicky and I'm your host.